Hello my Whoop friends, look what Betafpv sent me. The Betafpv Air65 Race Whoop, some fresh Betafpv Lava 1S 300 mAh 75 C Lipos, and the Air65 2 Brushless Whoop frame. The Betafpv Air65 Race Whoop is a 17.4 gram lightweight, about 80 km per hour fast, agile and efficient medium kV tiny whoop designed by Betafpv for intermediate and pro pilots. In my test flights, which you can see in this video, the maximum hover time was about 5 minutes. During normal flying with 300 mAh Lipos, realistic and healthy flight times are between about 1.5 and 4.5 minutes, depending on how much throttle you use and your flying style. Most pilots will get between 1.5 and 3.5 minutes in daily use. And with my freestyle racing style, I got between 1.5 and 2 minutes. I'll now hand over to my AI friend to narrate the rest of the video. If you don't like my AI friend, support me at coffee.com. If I raise a decent amount of money, I'll produce more self-narrated videos. Until then, my AI friend is the only way to produce long, data-rich videos in a reasonable amount of time. Use the chapters in the progress bar of the video to navigate through the chapters, or open the video description and then open the chapter sidebar in the description.
The flight controller on the Air65 Race is called the Air Brushless Flight Controller, and in this whoop, it's used in the 5-in-1 version. That means the ELRS receiver and the video transmitter are both built right into the board. It's super light at only 3.6 grams, made possible partly by shrinking the USB port. To connect it to your computer, you need to use the included USB adapter. The 5-amp ESCs on the board run BlueJ 96 kHz firmware, which makes motor control more efficient and gives you more flight time. The motor solder pads are large enough, but the MOSFETs are placed very close to the pads and near the edge of the board, which could be a small issue. I'll talk more about that later in the video. The 2.4 GHz ELRS antenna is directly soldered to the board, and the 5.8 GHz VTX antenna is attached with a UFL connector. You can adjust the VTX power from 25 milliwatts up to 400 milliwatts, and video reception during my test flights was totally fine. No surprises there. I also really like that the holes for the vibration damping grommets are fully closed, so the flight controller doesn't pop off the standoffs during hard crashes. You can find more details about this flight controller on the Betafpv website. The antenna of the Air65 Race is a simple linearly polarized dipole antenna. The video reception is perfectly fine with it. However, if you want even better video reception, you can use a circularly polarized antenna, such as the small antenna from Tiny Whoop. In my opinion, all other circularly polarized antennas are too heavy for a 75mm Tiny Whoop. But if you prefer video reception over performance, you can of course also use larger and heavier circularly polarized antennas with a UFL connector. Alternatively, you can buy a better video receiver module for your goggles along with antennas that fit your specific use case. If you want to learn more about video reception, I recommend watching my video on this topic. I might also make more videos about it in the future. Stay tuned. The Air65 Race uses 702SE2 27,000 kV motors, which are very lightweight at just 1.4 grams each, and now have curved magnets in version 2. Betafpv really improved these motors, and I could definitely feel the difference in my test flights. They're efficient and feel like they have more torque compared to the first version, giving you a more direct, snappy control response. That honestly surprised me in a good way, and I'm really glad Betafpv made that improvement. The motors use brass bushings instead of ball bearings, not as durable, but lighter. For the SE series, Betafpv clearly prioritized the lowest possible weight. The motor wires are soldered to a small PCB on the motor, which makes repairs easier if a wire breaks. On the flight controller side, the wires are directly soldered to the pads, which means better electrical contact than using motor plugs. That gives you slightly more power, more flight time, and a sharper, more responsive throttle feel. You also save about half a gram of weight by skipping the motor plugs, which helps agility, especially for racing. The downside is that you'll need to solder if you ever want to replace a motor, which might be a bit tricky for beginners. But from a performance perspective, directly soldered motor wires are definitely the better choice, and I can confirm that from my many years of experience. To prevent the motor wires from breaking at the transition between the flight controller and the wire, I recommend adding a small drop of soft glue like Uhu Por or E6000 to improve durability. You can find more info about these motors on Betafpv's website. Performance tip: if you're buying an Air65 from Betafpv, I highly recommend ordering peak motor screws as well. They're much lighter than the original steel ones and have a lower tendency to come loose. If you like my work and this YouTube channel, please consider ordering through the affiliate link in the video description to support what I do. The Air65 Race Whoop comes equipped with Gemfan 12.9S propellers. These modern propellers are very lightweight, efficient, and durable, and their low pitch makes them ideal for racing with high kV motors. I'm really glad that Betafpv chose these propellers. There's not much more to say. These propellers are simply great. Based on my experience, HQ prop propellers are not quite as efficient as the Gemfan 12.9S props, but they can be flown with slightly more precision. So, if you prioritize efficiency, the Gemfan 12.9S propellers are the right choice for you. And if you want maximum precision, you can also try the modern ultralight HQ prop propellers. The good thing is that Betafpv has already made a PID tune for both propellers. You can switch between the different PID profiles in Betaflight. The frame of the Air65 Whoop is the Air65 frame. However, Betafpv has since developed the Air65 two-brushless Whoop frame, which is even lighter and more aerodynamically optimized. Due to the reduced number of struts in the ducts, the thrust is slightly increased, and according to Betafpv, the lower and specially shaped ducts reduce lateral air resistance while also increasing overall thrust. In addition, the Air65 two-brushless Whoop frame is made from an improved polypropylene material, making it very durable and stiff. I can't confirm the overall stiffness by hand, except for the ducts, which are indeed very rigid and protect the propellers well in light to moderate crashes. I also did a small stiffness test where I could see that the Air65 Whoop frame and the Air65 2 Whoop frame are roughly the same in terms of stiffness, at least under heavier loads. Unfortunately, I forgot to test under lighter loads. Maybe the Air65 2 frame is stiffer under smaller loads, or maybe it has a different resonance frequency compared to the Air65 frame. To be honest with you, I don't know for sure, but what I can definitely feel as a pro pilot when flying with the Air65 2 frame is the slightly increased thrust and the lower side air resistance. The Air65 2 frame handles very well in sideways turns, which is especially important for race pilots. With the Air65 2 frame, my whoops feel more like open prop quads, and you can somehow sense that the whoop wants to go faster, like an angry bull ready to charge. It just has more forward drive, somehow. It's hard to describe. The control on the roll and pitch axes also feels a bit more responsive and quicker. On top of that, the Air65 2 frame seems to be quite durable. I'd say it's at least as strong, if not stronger, than the Air65 frame. But I can't say that with complete certainty yet, as I haven't flown either frame long enough to give you a reliable statement about durability. I'll make an update video about the Air65 2 frame in the future. So far, I've tested the Air65 2 frame with two different whoops, first with my new B-Drone Hummingbird V4 whoop, and then with the Betafpv Air65 Race whoop. In both cases, swapping the frame was no problem at all, and both tiny whoops fly perfectly fine with the Air65 2 frame. All in all, I can say that the Air65 frame meets my expectations as a pro pilot. I'd even say this frame is a must-have for pro pilots. Some beginner and intermediate pilots might prefer the slightly higher side air resistance of whoop frames with taller ducts. And even I personally still enjoy the flight feel of standard whoop frames. They somehow provide a bit more security while flying. So I can definitely understand why some pilots still prefer the older frame style. The difference isn't huge, and I think every pilot should fly both frames at least once to find out which one suits them best. The propeller protection is definitely a bit better on the Air65 frame, thanks to the stiffer ducts, another advantage. The Air65 frame also features slightly larger, fully open holes in the standoffs, which no longer need to be drilled out to use full-length M1.4 by 6mm or M14 by 8mm titanium screws. These relieve stress on the standoffs and make them practically indestructible, as I show in detail in another video on this YouTube channel. You'll find the link to that video in this video's description. Elite race pilots use M1.4 by 3mm Rennie screws for weight-saving reasons, and that's now possible too, without drilling. On the underside of the motor mounts, the Air65 frame now includes small screw protectors, which are ideal if you use Rennie or Peak motor screws that would otherwise get ground down when landing, often on rough concrete. A small but useful detail. Thanks to the 4 struts inside the ducts, the motors can now also be held more easily with your fingers during prop changes, another nice advantage. To sum it up, I can say that the Air65 brushless whoop frame is a great frame that I, as a pro pilot, really appreciate. I think every pilot can and should try the Air65 frame to see whether it fits their personal flying style and crash behavior. I hope I was able to clearly show you the differences between the Air65 and Air65 frames so you can decide which one to buy. Or maybe you'll try both. That's actually what I'd recommend right now. Visit the Betafpv website for more information about these whoop frames. They're available in different colors. If my work and this YouTube channel have value to you, please consider ordering through the affiliate link in the video description to support my work. Betafpv has also released an Air65 frame made of polypropylene material, which is also very light and durable. Of course, I tried to test the electronics of the Air65 Race whoop with the Air75 frame, but unfortunately, 2 of the 4 motor wires were too short. However, I tested it with another whoop equipped with 702 motors. The video about that is coming soon. Stay tuned. I can already tell you this much. The whoop flew well, and the Air75 frame seems to be good, but I still need to do more testing before I can give a final conclusion. The canopy of the Air65 whoop is the Betafpv Air Canopy, which is very lightweight and, in my opinion, a great idea from Betafpv. It's nice that you can mount many different FPV cameras inside the air canopy, and that the camera angle is adjustable. It's also good that the lens is well protected in crashes, and that the canopy's stiffness provides sufficient protection for the flight controller during impacts. However, from my point of view, the air canopy is not yet fully developed. It's not durable enough for hard crashes. If you use the air canopy on a light sub-18 grind tiny whoop, for example, flying whoop racing on a racetrack close to the ground with medium or soft terrain, then it's fine. But as soon as you crash from higher altitudes onto a hard surface, there's a high chance your air canopy will break. And when flying outdoors in colder weather, the durability decreases even more. I've already destroyed several of these canopies. If you buy an Air65 whoop, I recommend getting several air canopies as spares or switching to other canopy options, which I'll link for you in the description of this video. I hope Betafpv will improve this and produce an air canopy too. I think the main issue lies in the construction, the material, and the curvature, which should be slightly larger. If you buy a new one of these canopies, it's important to gently heat it with hot air before reshaping it so that it doesn't crack during bending. Maybe I'll make a video about that in the future. The air canopy is available in several colors. Visit the Betafpv website for more information about this canopy. The camera of the Air65 Whoop is the C03 FPV micro camera from Betafpv. From my experience, this camera is very durable. I'd even say it's one of the toughest cameras on the market. I haven't destroyed a single one so far, and if it does break someday, it's easy to replace without soldering because it's connected with a small plug. For many Whoop FPV cameras, it's important to apply a bit of flexible glue, such as Por or E6000, to the cables at the transition point between the camera board and the wire to further increase durability. This transition point is a weak spot on most Whoop FPV cameras. On the C03V micro camera, Betafpv has already applied glue to this cable transition, which is great to see. However, I still recommend checking whether the glue actually extends slightly onto the cable itself. On many cameras, there is glue present, but often not enough or not applied precisely. The glue needs to cover both the camera board and part of the cable to reinforce the connection between the solder joint and the wire. The lens of the C03 FPV micro camera has a relatively narrow field of view, which some pilots, especially beginners, appreciate. For race pilots, however, the small lens angle can be rather inconvenient, as many prefer wider fields of view. The lens thread is different from most FPV cameras, which means you can't easily replace the lens with one that has a wider angle. There are a few lenses on the market with this thread type, but they usually have a shorter thread, making the overall camera length shorter. As a result, depending on your canopy, parts of it may appear in the image, and you might need to modify the canopy to get an unobstructed view. The image contrast is also a bit low for race pilots. What personally bothers me a bit is a slight gray haze in the image, which becomes especially noticeable on cloudy days. The picture then looks very dark and gray. This can be slightly improved by increasing the display brightness and contrast in your goggles, but unfortunately, it can't be completely fixed. On sunny days, the image looks fine. In summary, I can say that the C03 is a solid beginner camera, but it may need to be replaced later as your flying skills improve and your speed increases. Visit the Betafpv website for more information about this camera. If my work and this YouTube channel have value to you, please consider ordering through the affiliate link in the video description to support my work. The PID tune of the Betafpv Air65 Race Whoop is surprisingly good. I was very pleased with it. Of course, it can always be improved, but for a bind and fly tiny whoop, the PID tune is really well done. You can tell Betafpv put effort into it. If you're starting FPV in 2025, consider yourself lucky because since this year, almost all bind and fly whoops come with solid PID tunes. It used to be quite different. That's why I'm very satisfied. This Air65 Race Whoop from Betafpv truly deserves the name bind and fly. Not just because of the PID tune, but also because the motors are excellent. I wish I could have started FPV flying back then with a whoop like this one. The Air65 Race Whoop from Betafpv is designed for 1S 260 300 mAh high C-rate lipos. Betafpv has been offering the Lava Lipos series for some time now, and they are very good. I'll be honest with you. The Lava 1S HV 300 mAh 75C lipos are not the absolute best on the market, if that matters to you. The difference compared to the market leader, the Tattu 1S HV 300 mAh 75C, is noticeable, but not huge, as you can see in my flight, Punchout, and hover tests. The flight time with the Lava Lipos is a few seconds shorter, and the voltage sag during long full throttle punchouts is about 0.15 volts higher. That can definitely be relevant, especially for pro and elite whoop pilots. For my flying style, as you can see in my videos, the Lava Lipos are perfectly fine. But if you're flying competitive races in the pro or especially the elite class, I recommend the Tattu 300 mAh lipos. Both brands are similarly priced by the manufacturer, around $22 for a pack of 5, but the Tattu lipos are often sold between $24 and $30 by resellers because of their popularity. So, if the Lava Lipos are cheaper in your country, they're a good alternative that will still make you happy. Both use proven Z-fold technology and deliver solid performance. I can't yet make long-term statements about the durability of the Lava 300 mAh lipos since I haven't flown them long enough. The Lava 300 milliamp hour Lipos have an average weight of 8.1 grams, slightly lighter than the Tattu 300 milliamp hour Lipos at around 8.3 grams, which may interest beginners. Every tenth of a gram less helps reduce crash force and potential damage. In my case, the weight difference between the lightest and heaviest cells in a 5-pack was smaller with the Lava 300 milliamp hour Lipos, though that might be coincidence. For the Lava 260 milliamp hour Lipos, the variation was similar to the Tattu cells. The Lava 260 milliamp hour Lipos average around 6.9 grams. In summary, I can say that both the Lava 1S HV 300 milliamp hour 75C and the Lava 1S HV 260 milliamp hour 75C Lipos from Betafpv are solid batteries that I can recommend for intermediate pilots. The maximum hover time of the Air65 Race whoop in my test flights, which you can see in this video, was 5 minutes using 300 milliamp hour Lipos charged to 4.35 volts. In normal flight, healthy flight times for the battery are between 1.5 and 4.5 minutes, depending on throttle usage and flying style. Most pilots will get between 1.5 and 3.3 minutes in everyday flying. With my freestyle race flying style, flight times were between 1.5 and 2 minutes. It's important for you to know that the voltage should never drop below 3.0 volts during flight. After flying, the battery, once removed from the whoop, should recover to 3.6 to 3.7 volts after about 10 minutes. That's how you know you've discharged it properly without going too low. If you follow this rule, your Lipos will last a long time. When charging, you should not exceed 2C, meaning for 300 milliamp hour Lipos, a maximum of 0.6 amps charging current. Ideally, charge at 1C, 0.3 amps in this case. Charging at 1C will extend your Lipos lifespan slightly. And if you won't use your Lipos for more than 2 days, store them at storage voltage, between 3.8 and 3.9 volts. Use a charger with a storage mode, such as the Vifly Whoop Store V3 or the G/PR's Who-powered W63 charger. Visit the Betafpv website for more information about these Lipos. Pro tip for long-lasting Lipos: if you're flying over concrete and want to protect your Lipos, use a Lipo condom. You can make one from heat shrink, 3D print one, or cut one from a 2mm foam sheet. It doesn't matter how you do it. What's important is that the front of your Lipo is protected in case of impact on concrete. If my work and this YouTube channel have value for you, please consider ordering through the affiliate link in the video description to support my work. During the testing process, the Air65 Race whoop caught a serious case of the whoop flu. It twitched during flight and drew more current than usual. Of course, I had pushed the whoop hard during my 100% throttle test flights, but I didn't crash often, and the whoop was still fairly new. That's why I was a bit surprised. I suspected that one of the ESCs was defective, because when a whoop draws more current than normal, there must be a small short circuit somewhere. But now comes the miracle, my friends. My Air65 Race whoop has recovered from the whoop flu. I had set it aside for a few days, and when I wanted to test it again, everything worked perfectly. The whoop flies like new again. I have no idea how this is possible, friends. My mind is blown. I didn't change anything on the whoop, and now it just flies again. I've flown many packs with it since then. The only issue that still happens occasionally is that the whoop sometimes doesn't connect to the transmitter when I plug in the Lipo. But that's easy to fix. Just unplug and plug the Lipo back in, and then it connects. There were also a few random RX losses, but I've experienced that with other whoops as well. It could also be due to my transmitter. So I would say that the Air65 Race whoop from Betafpv isn't completely problem-free. But for now, it's flying again, and I'm happy with it. I can't say how long it will stay that way, but I've seen similar miracles happen with other whoops from other manufacturers, and some of those still fly today, though others don't. The whoop hobby remains exciting. You never know when a whoop will give up. But honestly, my friends, we really put these tiny, delicate electronic creatures through a lot. It's actually a miracle that our little whoops last as long as they do. In any case, I'm currently flying again with the Air65 Race and testing the Air65 2 brushless whoop frame extensively. Stay tuned for more videos. In summary, I can say that the Air65 Race from Betafpv flew surprisingly well for a medium KV 65mm whoop in my test flights. The Air65 Race whoop really impressed me in a positive way, and I can clearly see and appreciate the improvements Betafpv has made. During my test flights, the Air65 Race whoop felt very balanced. It's fast, powerful, and snappy, yet still very efficient and well-tuned. It was truly a joy to fly this whoop. I hope I was able to show you all the details of the Air65 Race whoop from Betafpv in this video, so that you can decide whether you want to buy this whoop or not. It definitely gets a purchase recommendation from me, based on my experience from the test flights. Sure, it was a bit strange with the problem this whoop had, but my experiences with the Meteor 75 Pro, which I bought from Betafpv, were all good. That's why I would give this whoop another chance, even though mine had a slightly strange issue. I can't make a statement about how likely it is that your Air65 Race whoop will fly perfectly. I've heard both from pilots, positive and negative reports. I think, in the end, you have to listen to your gut and rely on your own experiences. But don't judge a company based on a single whoop that has a problem. That doesn't make sense, because I know from an insider that the reality is that about 30% of whoops break either right after purchase or after a few days or weeks. That's considered normal and acceptable in the industry. That means, basically, you have to be prepared for that in this hobby. You might get lucky, and 10 out of 10 whoops will last a long time. Or you might get unlucky, and 5 out of 10 will fail after a short time. The whoop god decides your whoop's fate. But even in the worst case, that just means you've effectively paid double for your whoops, around $200 per whoop. I think we have to accept that the store price isn't the true whoop price, and those who are unlucky end up paying about twice as much. That's whoop life, my friends. But the good thing is that even in the worst case, whoop racing is still cheaper for learning FPV flying than 5-inch racing. With whoops, you can learn everything you can imagine at a very low cost. And you don't bother anyone, because whoops are so small and quiet. From my point of view, that's reason enough to stay happy, thankful, and positive despite all the challenges in the whoop hobby. I wish you lots of fun practicing whoop flying, and I hope I was able to help you with this video. If you like this video and want to see more detailed reviews like this in the future, you can support my work on Ko-Fi.com. The link is in the video description. There you'll also find the Betafpv affiliate link you can use for your Betafpv orders to show them that you like my reviews and appreciate my work. Thank you very much for your support, my whoop friends. Happy whoopin'! Whoop whoop!
Some additional information can be found in the video description. Please watch my many other tutorials on this YouTube channel if you want to know more about how to modify a tiny whoop or how to learn FPV flying and racing.
Also, check out the tips and tricks in my YouTube community.
I hope you enjoyed my video and that you could learn something. Unfortunately, these videos are a lot of work and the costs are not nearly covered by the sponsorship of the material. That's why I appreciate any financial support. You can find the link to my Ko-fi website in the video description. Of course, I also appreciate likes, new subscribers, and most of all your comments. Together we will bring the FPV hobby to new levels. Happy flying, my whoop friends. See you next time on this YouTube channel. New videos are coming soon. Stay tuned, my whoop friends.